Hey, hello! This is the first video in a series of new videos that are meant for my first year students in tour. I am currently teaching a first year class, that is to say a class for freshers, as you would say in British English. And this class is called Aide à la réussite in French, which I have decided to translate into On Your Way to Success. The purpose of these videos is to recapitulate some of what needs to be said after the oral presentations made by groups of students on every Friday. Now let me explain for those of you who are not attending the Friday class, who are not my first year students, since this is a public channel. Every Friday a group of students has to present collectively in front of the class one book, and the book is a different book every week. Last Friday was the second class in the semester, and the book was Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Whenever there is a group of students presenting orally, I come up with one individual grading sheet per student, and the grading sheet for a student called Barack Obama, for instance, would look like this. And this is why I need to introduce the whole series by explaining what I'm going to do in these videos. I'm going to give you tips, to give you advice, to improve your English, to improve your oral skills in presenting in a more lively way. So this is going to be a series of videos to help you improve your oral skills for an oral presentation in front of a group. But it's also going to be a series of recapitulations about the mistakes that I hear every Friday. This is to say that I will take these individual sheets, the actual individual sheets where I've taken down notes about what mistakes commonly occur in your presentation. And this is why I have decided to make these videos public, because you never know, they might be helpful for people who are not first-year students in tour and who are not attending the Aide à la réussite class with me. Okay, so let me explain. The purpose of this first video is to explain the various categories on the briefing card that I will then give to each individual student. Meaning that you have been presenting with your friends in front of the whole group, and then I take down notes and I give you individual feedback about what you need to improve, what you need to work on, okay? So on each briefing card you will have several categories. Now let me show you this fictional briefing card, because Barack Obama is not one of my students, or I don't have a student called Barack Obama. Now on the grading sheet you will have this first category, which is called PRON, for pronunciation in French, which will deal with individual sounds. The second category will be AC, for accentuation, which is the French for stress. Then you will have GRE and VOC, which stand for grammaire vocabulaire, or grammar vocabulary, because it's the same. And then I might have a few remarks to make on intonation and débit in French, which correspond to intonation and rhythm in English. What I call prononciation, and which is not a very good habit I have anyway, what I call pronunciation is individual sounds. So in the category PRON, what you will have is a list of all the individual sounds where you made a mistake. In the category entitled AC, accentuation, you will have a series of words that you didn't stress properly. Regarding grammar and vocabulary, I don't think I need to explain. Of course, whenever you make a grammar mistake, especially a huge grammar or grammatical mistake, you can say both, grammar mistake, grammatical mistake. Whenever you make a huge grammar mistake, then you will find it here in that category. Same with vocabulary. Now, the last point I would like to make, to explain to you why it's so important not just to get the individual sounds right, but to think about stressing the words properly. Now, I'm quoting from the Learning English online website. Stress is the relative emphasis that may be given to certain syllables in a word, or to certain words in a phrase or a sentence. In English, stressed syllables are louder than non-stressed syllables. Also, they are longer and have a higher pitch. Now, just to take an example, improvising an example, take the word syllable. If you don't pronounce syllable properly, it may come, in fact, from the fact that you are not stressing it properly. For instance, if you say syllable, I might tell you, okay, the A, as it is spelled in the word syllable, should not be pronounced A but A. But in fact, as long as you don't understand that your mistake comes from not stressing syllable properly, you won't get it right. Because if you say syllable, the biggest mistake you are making is in not stressing properly. Syllable, it's stressed on the first syllable. Okay? The word syllable is stressed on the first syllable. Now, when I talk about intonation or rhythm, it has to do with that. For instance, a lot of students, when they present orally, especially if they read their notes, and I remind you that it's best to try and train yourselves at presenting orally without reading notes. Quite a few students have a tendency to have what you will call in French intonation montante, which means that you will pronounce sentences that are in fact declarations as if they were questions, which means that if you say Thomas Paine published Common Sense in 1776, that's an assertion. So you should pronounce it the way I've just said. I mean, the tone of your voice should go down at the end of the sentence. Thomas Paine published Common Sense in 1776. But there are quite a few of you, and there were at least 2 students last Friday that did that systematically. Some of you have a tendency, and it's pretty normal in a way, but it's wrong. It's pretty normal. I'm not saying it's shameful, but anyone doing that needs to work on that, okay? So some of you would come up and say, Thomas Paine published Common Sense in 1776. And that's not right, okay? So work on that as well. To sum up, this is the first video in a series, and the series is called On Your Way to Success. These videos are meant for students in my classes called Aide à la réussite, but anyone else is welcome to watch those and even to comment in the comments section of the YouTube video. The second point, and this is very important, is that for each individual oral presentation, every student will get an individual briefing card, okay? The third point is not to get confused between the various categories: individual sounds, stress, grammar, vocabulary, and intonation débit, which correspond to intonation and rhythm in English. The fourth point I want to make now is to explain to you how to work. Once you've got your individual briefing card, use it. This is where I really need to insist on personal work that you need to do. If you are not sure about how a word is pronounced, use, for instance, an online dictionary, but a good online dictionary where the pronunciation is given both with the phonetic alphabet and also as an audio file. For instance, all students from the Université de Tours can have access to the Oxford English Dictionary online through their personal student account. The second piece of advice I would like to give you is to go to the Centre de Ressources en Langue. There are dozens and dozens of CD-ROMs, books, audio files, where you can practice your oral skills. The third piece of advice is to make a list of words that are rather common, conventional, and that you don't pronounce correctly. And if you do that, what you need to do is not just to write down the list and stare at it. No, you need to work on it, meaning that every week, at least once, take that list and pronounce these words loud. The best way to do this is to do it in groups of 2 or 3 students and to listen to what the other is saying and trying to check whether this is the correct pronunciation or not. The fourth piece of advice I would like to give here is to read aloud texts that you need to work on for, I don't know, for your literature classes or your civilization classes. If there is a speech by Barack Obama that you are working on with your civilization teacher, then take some time to read it aloud. The best is in fact to record yourselves doing that and then to listen to what you've done and possibly to check. So this is a rather long video. This is the first in a series, and for today I'm saying, well, let's get to work together.